Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Super English Talks. My name is Jara, and I am so happy you're here with me today. If this is your very first time listening, let me say something important. You did not find this podcast by accident. You are here because you want to grow, you want to learn, you want to become a better version of yourself. And I want you to know you are not alone. Here at Super English Talks, we believe in learning together, step by step, one day at a time. Every day we share lessons, tips, and ideas that are not only about English but also about life. Because we believe knowledge, when shared with love, can truly change lives. So, if you are ready to take the next step, to learn something new, to feel motivated, and to believe in your own potential, then stay with us, subscribe, and let's walk this journey together. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever had this experience? You read an article in English and you understand every word. Or you watch a movie with subtitles and you follow the whole story. But then you turn on a podcast or you join a conversation and suddenly it feels like a completely different language. The people are speaking so fast. The words seem to connect and blur together, and your brain just can't keep up. You feel lost, maybe even frustrated. Have you ever felt that way? If you have, take a deep breath right now. Relax. You are not alone. Almost every English learner goes through this. And here's the good news. This feeling is not a bad sign. It is actually proof that you are growing.
Why?
Because it shows that you already have a strong foundation in grammar and vocabulary. You know the words. You know the rules. The problem is not your knowledge. The real challenge is that your brain has trained itself to understand English on paper, but it has not yet trained itself to decode the natural, fast flow of spoken English. And that is exactly what we are going to work on today. In this episode, we are going to take a long and detailed journey together. I want this to feel less like a class and more like a warm, friendly conversation between us. We will explore why listening feels so hard, what is really happening in your brain, and then we will build a step-by-step plan to make listening easier and more natural. Here's how we'll do it. First, I'll tell you a story about my friend Amelia. Then we'll look at the main reasons why listening feels so difficult. Finally, we'll build a simple but powerful plan that you can start using today to become an active, confident listener. By the end of this episode, you will have a clear roadmap, a way to go from being a passive listener, someone who feels lost, to being an active language detective who can really understand what you hear. So, let's begin with the story of Amelia. Amelia is a brilliant architect from Spain. A few years ago, she moved to the United States for a new job. On paper, her English looked perfect. She had scored very high on her English exam. She could read professional articles without any problem. She could even write detailed reports with almost no mistakes. But then came real life. When she went to meetings, she found it almost impossible to follow the conversations. Her colleagues spoke quickly, used expressions she had never seen in books, and sometimes even interrupted each other. For Amelia, it sounded like a blur of sounds, not like the clear sentences she had practiced in her textbooks. At first, she felt frustrated and even embarrassed. She thought, maybe my English. Step by step, with patience and practice, you too can go from feeling lost to feeling confident in your English listening. Amelia was amazing at writing. She could explain complex ideas clearly, and her grammar and vocabulary were excellent. But when she moved to New York City, a place with 1,000 accents and a very fast rhythm, she felt lost. She told me it felt like this. She had trained for a slow, beautiful classical concert, and then walked into a loud, fast jazz club. The music was good, but it was new, surprising, and too quick for her ears. She wasn't ready for that sound yet. One day, she went to a hardware store to buy a specific drill bit. She had the exact name written in her notebook. She walked up to the counter and showed the paper to the man working there. He was kind-looking and friendly, and he had a strong New York accent. "Hello, can you help me find this?" she asked, smiling. He looked at the paper, nodded, and started talking. His words came in a quick, steady rhythm, clear to him, but strange to her. He said something like, "We just got that in on Thursday morning." Amelia heard two words clearly, Thursday and morning. But the rest sounded like one long sound. Her brain is great at reading. Got slash that slash in 3 separate words on a page. But in real speech, those words often blend. Got that in can sound like got hidden, or even got the tin. To Amelia, it didn't sound like 3 words. It sounded like one musical phrase.
She froze.
Her mind went blank for a moment. She didn't know what to say. So she said the safest words she could think of. "Yes, thank you." Then she walked away, confused and a little embarrassed, with no idea where to find the drill bit. That gap, the space between the English she knew and the English she heard, felt huge. It felt like a big, unbridgeable canyon. And it didn't happen only once. It happened everywhere. At work, colleagues had quick chats about projects. People spoke over each other, used slang, and moved fast. Amelia missed key details. In cafes, she misheard orders and got the wrong drink. Even when she had prepared exactly what to say, she still felt tired, alone, and frustrated. Her confidence, which was so strong when she read or wrote, started to fall apart when she had to listen and respond in real time. The problem wasn't knowledge. The problem was listening style. Amelia had practiced passive listening for years, listening to absorb information. That's what we do when music is playing while we clean the house. We hear the sounds, but we don't focus on every detail. What she needed now was active listening, listening to decode, process, and respond in the moment. That's what we do when a close friend tells us a secret.
We lean in.
We focus on every word, every small detail, every change in tone. We are fully present. That is the shift you need to make too, from passive to active. From I hear sounds to I collect clues. From this is too fast to I'm a detective and I'm catching the important pieces. Think of yourself as a language detective. Detectives don't need every single word to solve the case. They look for clues, keywords, names, dates, numbers, places. Stress and intonation, which words sound stronger. Context, where are you? What's the topic? What makes sense here? Repeated phrases, what keeps coming up? With these clues, the meaning becomes clear. Now, I want you to think about your own experience for a moment. When was the last time you felt like Amelia? Maybe it was a fast phone call. Maybe it was a YouTube video without subtitles. Maybe a friend introduced you to someone new and the conversation moved too quickly. Take a few seconds and picture that moment. Where were you? Who was speaking? What did you understand? What did you miss? How did your body feel? Tense, nervous, stuck? If you can, say one sentence out loud that summarizes the moment. I was at the cafe and I understood the greeting, but I missed the drink options.
Good.
That's your starting point. Now, let me show you the simple active listening toolkit Amelia used to cross that canyon. You can use it anywhere, at a store, at work, or while listening to this podcast. The active listening toolkit, simple and practical. Predict the topic, 5 seconds. Before listening, tell your brain what to expect. Hardware store, tools, sizes, aisle numbers, price when it arrived. Prediction gives your brain a map. When the words come, they have a place to land. Chunk the speech. Don't chase every word. Listen in small groups of 3 to 4 words. Instead of we slash, just slash, got slash, that slash and slash on slash Thursday slash morning. Here, we just got that in slash on Thursday morning. Small groups are easier to catch than a long chain. Catch the anchors. Focus on names, numbers, dates, and strong words. In the hardware store, aisle 7, half-inch, Thursday morning, back wall. Anchors carry the meaning. If you catch them, you can act. Use quick repair phrases. It's normal to ask for help. Keep it short and polite. Sorry, a bit slower, please. Did you say aisle 7? Could you repeat the last part? Just to check. Thursday morning, right? People repeat all the time. It's not a test. Shadow for one line. If you can, quietly repeat the last 2 to 3 words you heard under your breath or in your head. This trains your ear to the rhythm and keeps you engaged. Notice common blends. English often connects words. Got that in got hidden. Did you? Wanna. Going to gonna. You don't need to love these forms. You just need to recognize them. Summarize in one sentence. After the person speaks, say one simple line to confirm. So, it's in on Thursday morning, right? This turns listening into a short, clear exchange. A quick story replay now with tools. Back to the hardware store. If Amelia had used the toolkit, it might have sounded like this. Predict. They'll tell me where it is or when it arrived. Chunk. We just got that in slash on Thursday morning. Anchors. Thursday morning. Repair. Great. Where can I find it, please? Or which aisle? Summarize. So Thursday morning, aisle 7? See how small steps turn a blur into an answer? Try a micro-practice right now. Think of that moment you chose earlier. Say a one-sentence summary out loud. I understood the greeting, but I missed the instructions. Now add a repair phrase you could have used. Could you repeat the last part a bit slower? That's active listening. Clear goal, simple tools, small action. So let me ask you something important. What exactly happened in your mind the last time you struggled to understand English? Maybe you heard the sounds clearly, but you couldn't separate them. Maybe your brain was searching for the words you knew, but what you heard didn't match. That tiny moment of confusion, when your mind goes blank, isn't because you're bad at English. It's because of a habit. Yes, that's all it is, a habit. And habits can change. The first step in becoming an active listener is to face the biggest villain in this story, connected speech. This is the secret reason why native speakers seem to talk so fast. It's why Amelia didn't hear got that in as 3 separate words. In natural English, people don't pause between every word. Instead, we link them together. Words blend. Sounds flow. And the result is a continuous stream of speech that feels impossible to cut into pieces. But don't worry, this isn't a mystery you can't solve. Once you know the patterns, you'll start hearing them everywhere. Step 1. Linking consonants to vowels. This happens constantly in English. When a word ends with a consonant sound and the next word starts with a vowel sound, the two sounds connect. Take the phrase, take it easy. In slow, careful speech, you hear, take slash at slash easy. But in natural speech, the K sound moves into the next word. Talk it easy. Even more, the T in it connects to easy. So it often comes out sounding like, tuck it easy. Here's another one. Turn it off. On paper, 3 words. In real speech, they become, turn it off, ton it off, tarof. The sounds slide together, and suddenly your brain is looking for 3 clear words when, really, it hears one blended sound. Step 2. Reductions. Even more common than linking is something called reductions. This is when we don't pronounce the full form of a word, we shorten it. We make it quicker, lighter. For example, going to gonna, wanna, have to, what do you wadaya, or even waya. These reductions are not bad English. They're not lazy. They're just the natural, everyday rhythm of speech. Native speakers use them all the time. Now, think back to Amelia at the hardware store. She was ready to hear, "We've got to find it." But what the man probably said was, "We gotta find it." Her brain was searching for got to, but what came was gotta. So she felt lost. That's what reductions do. They hide the full form you expect and replace it with a faster version. If you don't know the code, it feels like a new language. I remember Amelia telling me about this on a rainy afternoon in a small cafe. She was sitting across from me with her coffee, frustrated, shaking her head. She said, "I know the words.
I've studied them.
But when people talk, it feels like they change everything. I can't hear what I know." And I told her, "They aren't changing the words. They're just using connected speech. Once you train your ear to notice the links and reductions, the mystery disappears. You'll hear the real English that people use every day." And that was the beginning of her breakthrough. Amelia looked at me across the table, her coffee growing cold. "Jara," she said, "I know all the words. I can see them in my head perfectly, like a picture in a book. But when people speak, those words just disappear. It's like my brain is searching for something that isn't there. And by the time I finally figure it out, the conversation has already moved on." I smiled gently and said, "It's not that the words aren't there. It's that they're wearing a different outfit." Just then, a woman walked past our table with a coffee in her hand. She was talking to her friend and said, "I'm gonna get a latte." Amelia's eyes widened. She had heard the sounds, but her brain had first treated them like random, disconnected pieces. Now, knowing what to listen for, she suddenly recognized the familiar phrase "going to." Only this time, it wasn't in its careful classroom form. It had changed outfit. Going to had become gonna. That tiny realization was huge for her. She understood, at last, that the problem wasn't knowledge. The problem was training her ear. She needed to learn to hear English the way it is actually spoken, not just the way it looks on paper. So, how do you train your ear? How do you teach your brain to recognize words in their different outfits? This is where I taught Amelia a simple but powerful exercise. I call it the chunking and shadowing method. It's a way to transform passive listening into active listening, and it builds the bridge between the English you read and the English you hear. Here's how it works. Step 1. Choose a short clip. Find a tiny piece of real spoken English. 15 to 30 seconds is perfect. It could be a podcast, a scene from a TV show, or even a few lines from a song. The key is that it should be natural, conversational English. Step 2. First listen. The big picture. Play the clip once. Don't worry about every detail. Just catch the general meaning, the overall mood. This keeps your brain relaxed. Step 3. Second listen. Notice the connections. Play it again, but this time listen carefully for how the words connect. For example, the phrase, "What do you want to eat?" might sound more like, "What I want to eat." This is the moment to pause the clip and replay small parts. Step 4. Shadow the speaker. After a phrase, pause the clip and repeat what you just heard. Try to copy not only the words, but also the intonation, the rhythm, and the speed. Imagine yourself as the speaker's shadow. You move exactly when they move. This isn't just repeating. This is mirroring the melody, the beat, and the flow of real English. Step 5. Break into chunks. Here's the most important part. Don't focus on single words. Focus on chunks of sound. If the speaker says, "I'm going to go to the store," don't try to separate every word. Instead, hear, "I'm gonna, chunk 1, go to the store, chunk 2. You are training your brain to recognize the music of English, not just the notes. Step 6. Repeat often. Do this with different clips, just a few minutes a day. The more you do it, the more your ear will start to recognize patterns. Suddenly, when you hear fast English in real life, your brain won't panic. It will say, "I know this song. I've heard this rhythm before." It's a simple practice, but for Amelia, it was a breakthrough. Little by little, her ear and her mouth started working together. The words no longer sounded like a blur. They began to sound familiar, like music she could finally dance to. But of course, connected speech is only part of the challenge. Amelia soon discovered another big hurdle: accents and speed. In her English classes back in Spain, She had always listened to one clear, neutral accent. The pace was slow, careful, and perfect for the classroom. But New York City was a completely different world. In the hardware store, the man had a strong local accent. In her office, colleagues from all over the world spoke English in their own unique ways: Indian English, Brazilian English, French English, Chinese English. Each had its own rhythm, intonation, and speed. At first, Amelia felt overwhelmed again. It was like she had been trained to understand one single voice, but now she had to adjust to hundreds of voices, each with its own style. And that's the next step in her journey, learning not just how to hear connected speech, but how to adapt to the infinite variety of English accents and speeds. Her brain was very good at understanding one type of English, the kind she had practiced in school. But when she came to the real world, she discovered something new. English does not sound the same everywhere. We often imagine that all native speakers sound the same, but that is not true at all. Think about it. A person from Texas in the United States does not sound like a person from London in the United Kingdom. A person from Ireland sounds very different from a person from Australia. Even inside one country, people sound different. A person from New York City has a very different way of speaking compared to someone from California. This is why listening practice is so important. Our ears need to learn how to hear many voices, many accents, and many styles of speaking. We need to make our ears flexible, almost like a muscle. If you only listen to one type of English, your ear will only be strong in that one area. But the real English-speaking world is full of different voices, so your ear must be ready for all of them. Now, let's talk about speed. This is another big challenge. In English classes, teachers often speak slowly and clearly. This is good when you are learning, but it does not prepare you for the real world. In everyday life, people don't always speak slowly. When people are excited, they speak faster. When people are happy, or angry, or just in a hurry, their speed changes. When people tell a funny story, they often change their rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes with pauses for effect. This is normal, natural speech. And here's the key point. This is not a problem with your English. It is not because you don't know enough grammar or vocabulary. The problem is that your ear is not yet trained to keep up with the natural speed of English. Think about a musician. Imagine a musician who only practices slow, gentle songs on the piano. Then one day, someone gives them a fast, difficult song to play. The musician already knows all the notes, but their fingers cannot move fast enough. They are not ready for the speed. This is exactly what happens with listening. You know the words. You know the grammar. But your brain, which is the musician in this example, needs more practice to process the sounds at high speed. I remember Amelia telling me about her first weeks at her new job in the United States. She went to a team meeting. Everyone was discussing a project. The team leader, a woman from California, spoke quickly and with a relaxed, casual voice. Amelia tried to follow. The team leader said something like, "Okay, so the client wants us to make some changes to the presentation before we send it to them." Now, Amelia caught some big words: client, changes, presentation. But the rest of the sentence sounded like one long, fast sound. Her brain couldn't keep up with the smaller words, like wants us to, or to the. They disappeared in the speed. Amelia froze. She was so busy trying to understand the first part of the sentence that she completely missed the last part. She left the meeting with only a vague idea of the project. She didn't really know what her job was supposed to be. She felt like she had failed. But the truth is, she didn't fail. Her English was not the problem. The only problem was that her ear wasn't trained yet. So the big question is, how do we train our ears to understand different accents and different speeds? We start with a very small but very powerful change. You must begin to think of yourself as a language detective. When you listen, you are not just listening for words. You are listening for clues. The clues are the sounds, the rhythm, the music of the voice, the intonation, and also the context of the situation. A detective looks for small signs to solve the case. You must do the same with English. Your ear must become flexible. It must be strong enough to recognize any accent, any rhythm, any speed. That is the goal. Now, let's practice together. I want you to try something I call the 1-minute focus exercise. This is a simple and very effective way to train your ear. Here's what to do. Find a short audio clip. It could be from a TV show, a movie, or even a YouTube video. Make sure it is something you have never watched before. Play only 1 minute of the audio. As you listen, don't worry about understanding every word. That is not the goal. The goal is to notice 3 things. The accent. Does it sound American, British, Australian, or something else? The rhythm. Does the person speak smoothly, or do they pause a lot? The speed. Does the person speak fast or slow? That's it. For 1 minute, just focus on those 3 things: accent, rhythm, speed. Remember, this exercise is not about comprehension. You don't need to understand the meaning. You are simply training your ear to hear the music of English. It's about training your ear to notice the music of English. It's about teaching your brain to get comfortable with the many voices, accents, and rhythms of the language. When you do the 1 minute focus exercise, you don't need to listen for a long time. Just 1 minute is enough. After that, you can stop and reflect. Try to describe what you heard. Don't focus on the exact words. Instead, talk about the voice. Was it deep or high? Was the speaker fast or slow? Did they pause a lot? Or was their speech smooth and continuous? This small act of noticing and describing will slowly retrain your ear. It may feel simple, but it is very powerful. Think of a musician again. When musicians practice their scales, they are not trying to play a full song. They are only moving their fingers up and down the instrument to build speed and flexibility. Later, when they play a real song, their fingers are ready. In the same way, you are training your ear, not to understand every word, but to be flexible and ready for any sound, any accent, any speed, and any rhythm. This is a huge step forward. It helps you become more confident. It moves you from being a passive listener, someone who only hears the sounds, to being an active listener, someone who can decode, process, and adapt to what is being said. But as you begin to practice this, you will meet another challenge. And it is a big one. What about the words you don't know? What about those strange idioms or phrases you've never heard before? We've all been there. You're listening to a conversation, and suddenly one word or phrase appears that you don't recognize. It's like a wall in your brain. You get stuck on that single word, trying to understand it. And while you're busy thinking, the speaker continues talking. By the time you recover, the conversation has already moved on. You are left behind, confused and frustrated. This happens to learners at every level, even advanced students. Reading is one thing. When you read, you have time. You can stop, check a dictionary, and think. But listening is different. Words disappear as soon as they are spoken. You don't have time to pause. That's why a word you know in writing can still feel completely unfamiliar in fast speech. This problem has a name. It's called the gap between passive vocabulary and active vocabulary. Your passive vocabulary is all the words you recognize when you read or when you hear them slowly. Your active vocabulary is the much smaller set of words you can catch instantly in real time. The truth is, most learners have thousands of words sitting in their brains that they can't access quickly enough when listening. And then, of course, there are words you truly don't know at all. New idioms, slang expressions, cultural references. What do you do then?
Do you panic?
Do you nod politely and pretend you understood? Do you freeze? There is a better way. The secret is to think like a detective. And what is the detective's most powerful tool? Context. Context is everything. Context is what allows you to make sense of a conversation, even when you don't know every word. Let me give you an example. I once had a student named Carlos. He was from Colombia and his English level was about B2, which means he was already quite good. He worked in a company with many American colleagues. One day, during a meeting, a colleague was talking about a project. This colleague had a very relaxed, casual style of speaking. He said, "I think we dropped the ball on that last project, but we're going to make sure we don't do it again on this one." Carlos froze. He had never heard the phrase "drop the ball" before. His brain imagined an actual ball falling on the floor. He got stuck on that literal picture, and while he was thinking about it, the conversation kept moving. Carlos told me later that he was completely confused. In his head, he thought, Was someone playing a game at work? Why is this person suddenly talking about a ball? He couldn't understand why his colleague said, "We won't do it again." He got stuck trying to understand the literal meaning, an actual ball falling on the floor. Because of that, he missed the rest of the sentence completely. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded politely and pretended to understand. But inside, he felt embarrassed and frustrated. He wanted to participate in the conversation, but the idiom had blocked him. Later, he discovered that dropped the ball is a common idiom that simply means to fail, to make a mistake, or to not do something correctly. Now, let's pause here for an important lesson. The real problem wasn't Carlos's vocabulary. He already knew hundreds and hundreds of words. The problem was that he hadn't yet trained himself to be a language detective. If Carlos had been thinking like a detective, he would have looked for clues all around him. The sentence was about a project that didn't go well. That's a clue. The speaker's tone of voice was probably serious, maybe even a little disappointed. That's another clue. And then the colleague added, "But we're going to make sure we don't do it again." That's the biggest clue of all. From those hints, Carlos could have guessed that dropped the ball meant something negative, probably connected to failure or making a mistake. This is the power of context. Context is your best friend when listening. It's like building a puzzle. Even if you don't have all the pieces, you can still see the picture. So, how can you practice the skill? I have a simple activity for you, and I like to call it the context clues game. Here's how it works. Find a short audio clip that's just a little bit above your level. It could be from a podcast, a TV show, or a movie. Listen once, but don't try to catch every single word. Just focus on the big picture. What's the topic? Is the speaker happy, sad, excited, or serious? Now listen a second time. When you hear a word or phrase you don't know, do not stop the recording. Do not rush to the dictionary. Instead, pause for just a moment and make a guess. Ask yourself, what's the overall topic here? What is the speaker's emotion or tone? What do the words around it tell me? Write your guess in your notebook. Then, keep listening. Don't let that one word stop you. After you finish listening, you can look up the word and check if your guess was right. This game might feel strange at first, but it's very powerful.
Why?
Because it trains your brain to stay calm when you hear something you don't know. It teaches you to stay inside the conversation instead of panicking. You learn that you can still understand the big picture even if you miss some details. Over time, this builds a new habit. Instead of freezing when you don't know a word, you'll become curious. You'll start collecting clues, just like a detective solving a mystery. And little by little, your listening skills will transform. This is a huge step forward. It takes you from fear to confidence, from confusion to resourcefulness, and from feeling lost to truly understanding. As you begin to practice these new listening skills, you will need a steady supply of materials. But here's the big question. Where do you find them? And more importantly, how do you turn something like a TV show or a podcast into a powerful learning tool instead of just entertainment? The answer is simple. You must stop being a passive consumer and start being an active listener. This is something many learners struggle with. I hear it all the time. I watch movies in English, but I don't feel like I'm improving. I listen to English songs, but I don't understand much. I can follow along if I read the subtitles, but without them I'm lost. Does that sound familiar to you? If yes, you're not alone. The problem isn't your effort. The problem is that your brain is sitting back, being comfortable, and letting the subtitles or the music carry all the weight. You are receiving English passively, not working with it actively. And that's why I want to share with you a very simple but incredibly powerful method called the layered listening technique. This method helps you take ordinary media like your favorite show or a podcast and turn it into an active listening exercise that really trains your ear. Let me tell you a story about my friend Liam. Liam is from Vietnam, and his English level is about B1, which is an intermediate level. He absolutely loved American TV shows. Every evening, he would watch series like Friends or The Office. He watched for hours. But there was one big problem. He always watched them with subtitles in his native language. One day he told me, "Jara, when the subtitles are on, I feel like I understand everything. But the moment I turn them off, I'm completely lost. I can't follow anything, and I don't feel like I'm improving." I smiled and said, "Liam, the problem is not the shows. The problem is that you're not really listening. You're using your eyes, not your ears. The subtitles are doing all the hard work for your brain. If you want to improve your listening, you have to use both your eyes and your ears in the right way." At first, Liam was frustrated. He didn't like the idea of letting go of subtitles. But he was also ready to try something new. So I gave him a simple 3-step plan, and this plan completely changed the way he listened to English. Here's the plan I gave him. Step 1. Watch without subtitles. I told Liam to pick a very short scene, just 2 or 3 minutes, from a show he already enjoyed. That little scene would become his language lab for the day. The first step was to watch the scene with no subtitles at all. His only goal was to listen for the general idea. Not every word, not every detail, just the main point. I told him, "Ask yourself, what is this scene about? Is it funny? Is it serious? Are the people angry, or are they happy?" This first step was not easy. His brain immediately wanted to look for the subtitles. It wanted to cheat. But he stayed strong. He forced himself to just listen. He later told me, "Jara, I think I only understood maybe 30% of a scene." And I said, "That's perfect. That's success." The goal is not perfection. The goal is to train your ear to catch the main idea without any help. Step 2. Watch again with English subtitles. The second step was to watch the same scene again, but this time with English subtitles. Now something amazing happened. His brain started to make connections. He could hear the words and see them written at the same time. Suddenly, he could notice how the words he thought he was hearing were actually pronounced. He could see why he missed some parts in the first step. This step gave him many aha moments. For example, he told me, "Jara, I thought they were saying I don't want to do it, but then I saw the subtitles and they actually said I do not want to do it. Now I finally understand why I couldn't hear all the words." That's the beauty of step 2. It builds a map in your brain. You see the words, you hear the words, and your brain starts connecting sound with meaning. Step 3. Watch again without subtitles. Finally, I told him to watch the same short scene one more time, but again without subtitles. This time, something magical happened. Because he had already listened once and read the subtitles once, his brain was ready. The second time without subtitles, he could hear much more. He wasn't stuck at 30% anymore. Maybe now he understood 50%, 60%, even 70%. And each time he practiced like this, his ears became sharper, his confidence grew, and English started to sound less like noise and more like something familiar. That, my friends, is the layered listening technique. First, listen without help. Then, listen with English subtitles to build connections. Finally, listen again without subtitles to test your ears. It's simple. It's powerful, and it transforms passive watching into active listening. Now Liam's brain finally had a map. He had already listened once for the general idea. He had seen the words in English subtitles. And now, in the final step, his brain was ready to put everything together. When he watched the scene again without subtitles, something amazing happened. The fast sounds that once felt like pure noise were now recognizable. The words didn't blur together anymore. He could hear the connections. He could pick out the important vocabulary. And most importantly, he could follow the conversation with much more confidence. This, my friends, is the power of the layered listening technique. It turns something that feels passive, like watching TV or listening to a song, into an active learning tool. You're no longer just sitting back and receiving sounds. You are working with the language layer by layer until your brain begins to decode it naturally. And here's the best part. You can apply this method to almost anything. A TV show, a YouTube video, a short podcast, even a song. The rule is simple. Pick a short piece of audio. Listen to it more than once. Add layers, first general listening, then with subtitles or transcripts, then again without help. With each listen, your brain learns more. It's like shining a light on a dark room. At first, you only see a few shapes, but each time you return, the picture becomes clearer, sharper, and easier to recognize. The benefits are huge. Your listening skills improve. Your active vocabulary grows. You begin to understand connected speech, the way real people actually talk in daily life. But of course, at some point, you have to step outside the safety of your home and face the real world. And this is where things become both challenging and rewarding. Because let's be honest, it's one thing to sit at home, pausing and rewinding a podcast as many times as you like. But it's a completely different thing to stand in front of a real person who is speaking quickly, with their own accent, their own rhythm, and their own personality, and they are expecting you to respond in real time. This is the stage where many learners feel the most vulnerable. It's also the stage where the biggest breakthroughs happen. But here's the problem. When you're in a fast conversation, your brain often experiences what I call a psychological listening block. It's like your brain freezes. The pressure builds. The words are coming too quickly. And instead of being the confident language detective you practiced at home, you suddenly become a passive observer. You nod, you smile, and you just hope the conversation will move on without requiring you to speak. This is exactly what happened to my student Amelia. Amelia had been practicing for months. She had used shadowing. She had practiced rhythm. She had tried the layered listening method with movies. At home, she felt ready. She was improving. But when it came to real-time conversations, she hit a wall. She told me about one moment at work during a team coffee break. She was standing with 3 colleagues, and they were all talking about their weekend plans. At first, she felt okay. She understood the general topic. But then the pace picked up. People were interrupting each other, laughing, talking over one another. The conversation was moving like a fast train, and Amelia couldn't keep up. She said, "Jara, it was like my brain was a computer with a very slow internet connection. The words were coming in, but they were buffering. And by the time they had finished loading, the conversation had already jumped to a new topic." The result? Anxiety. A wave of self-doubt. She started asking herself, what if I say something wrong? What if I misheard them? What if I respond too slowly and everyone just stares at me? She was so focused on trying to be perfect that she never even started. She just stood there, smiling and nodding, but feeling completely isolated in a room full of people. And this, my friends, is a very common stage of the journey. Many learners get stuck here. But the good news is, there's a way forward. Amelia felt like she had failed. But the truth is, she hadn't failed at all. She had simply reached a new stage of the listening journey, a stage that was more difficult, a stage that required new tools. And that is so important for you to remember. This moment, this listening block, is not a sign that you are bad at English. It is not a sign that you will never improve. It is simply a sign that you are pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. And that, my friend, is a good thing. Growth only happens when we step into uncomfortable places. The goal is not to erase this feeling completely. The goal is to manage it. The goal is to stop your brain from freezing, to keep the conversation alive, even if you didn't understand every single word. The goal is to move from fear and silence into confidence and communication. And here's another important truth. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to understand 100% to be part of the conversation. What you need are the right tools, the right conversational strategies that help you stay engaged, stay calm, and stay connected with the person speaking to you. So how do we begin to overcome this fear? We use simple but powerful conversational techniques. Tools that will help you in real-time conversations. Tools that will help you when the pressure is high. Tools that will make you feel like an active participant, not just a passive listener. The first and most important tool is this. Ask for clarification or repetition. Now, this is where many learners feel nervous. Maybe you felt it too. You think, if I ask someone to repeat, will I sound rude? Will they think my English is not good enough? Let me erase that fear right now. Asking for clarification is 100% natural. Everyone does it, even native speakers. Think about your own language. How many times have you said to a friend, "Sorry, what?" Or, "Can you say that again?" Probably hundreds of times. It happens every single day. So please don't see it as a weakness. It's not. It's actually a sign of strength. It shows that you are listening carefully. It shows that you care about understanding. It shows that you are engaged in the conversation. Now, instead of smiling and nodding when you don't understand, I want you to carry a few simple, polite phrases in your conversation toolbox. For example, you can say, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you say it again, please? Could you repeat that a little more slowly, please?" Or even something very short like, "What was that?" All of these are natural. All of these are polite. And all of these are effective. Here's why they work. They pause the conversation for just a moment, giving your brain time to process. They signal to the other person to slow down or say it more clearly. They show that you are actively listening and want to understand. This one skill, asking for clarification, can completely change the way you feel in real conversations. Instead of freezing, instead of pretending, you take control. You keep the conversation alive. The second tool is just as powerful. Confirming your understanding. This second technique is something that can completely change the way you feel in a conversation. It takes the pressure off of you and puts the focus back on the conversation itself. Instead of worrying, "What if I misunderstood?" you can simply check. You can confirm. The way to do this is by paraphrasing. That means saying the same idea but in your own words. When you paraphrase, you are showing two things at the same time. First, that you were really listening, and second, that you care about understanding correctly. It also gives the other person a chance to correct you if you got it wrong. Here are two very simple phrases you can use. "So, if I understand correctly, you mean?" Just to make sure I'm on the same page, you're saying, these phrases are polite. They are natural. And they are incredibly powerful. This is exactly what my friend Amelia learned to do, and it changed everything for her. Let me tell you one last story about her, because this is where her listening journey came full circle. After months of practicing the techniques we've talked about, shadowing, listening for rhythm, layered listening, and using context clues, She started to feel more confident. Yes, she was still a little nervous, but she was no longer frozen by fear. One day, during a team meeting at work, her manager was explaining a new project. The manager was speaking quickly and used a few idioms that Amelia had never heard before. In the past, Amelia would have shut down. She would have smiled, nodded, and pretended to understand while actually feeling lost. But not this time. This time, she remembered her tools. When the manager paused to take a breath, Amelia jumped in politely. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the last part. Could you repeat that, please?" Her manager, who was kind and patient, immediately smiled and said, "Of course." Then she repeated the part Amelia had missed, this time just a little slower and clearer. A few minutes later, after hearing the full explanation, Amelia used her second tool. She confirmed her understanding. She said, "So, if I understand correctly, we need to create a new website for this project by the end of the month, right?" Her manager's face lit up. She said, "Exactly. That's it." And at that moment, something changed for Amelia. She realized that asking for clarification and confirming understanding didn't make her look weak. It made her look confident. It made her look engaged. She was no longer a passive listener. She was now an active participant. And there's one more tool I want you to carry with you. It's a very natural one, and you'll hear native speakers use it all the time, using filler phrases to buy time. We often think silence or pauses are bad, but they're not. Pauses are normal. They give you time to think, and they make the conversation feel more natural. Native speakers do this constantly. So, when you need a few extra seconds to process or to find the right word, use simple filler phrases like, "That's a good question. Well, let me think about that for a second." These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of thoughtfulness. They show that you are engaged, that you are processing, and they give your brain those few extra seconds it needs to catch up. So, here's your practice challenge for today. In your next conversation, whether it's with a friend, a teacher, a language partner, or even while practicing alone in your language lab, I want you to use at least one of these tools. Either ask for clarification or confirm your understanding with a paraphrase. It doesn't matter if it feels a little awkward at first. That's normal. What matters is that you are training your brain not to freeze, but to engage. We'll call this the confirmation challenge. By practicing this, you'll move one step closer to becoming a confident, active listener who can handle real-time conversations, even when they feel fast, messy, or difficult. As you continue building these skills, you'll notice something important. All of the tools we've talked about, clarification, confirmation, filler phrases, and layered listening, work beautifully together. They make you a more confident, active listener. But there's still one last piece of the puzzle. And without this piece, your English may sound flat, robotic, or even confusing. That missing piece is what I like to call the music of the language, the rhythm, the stress, and the intonation of English. Think about this. You can say a sentence with perfect grammar and perfect vocabulary, but if you say it with a completely flat voice, it won't sound natural. In fact, it might even give the wrong impression. This is one of the most common challenges I see in English learners. They work so hard on getting the words right that they forget how they say those words matters just as much. The rhythm and melody of English give your speech life, emotion, and meaning. They are what transform a simple sentence from a list of words into real communication. They are the difference between sounding like you are just stating facts and sounding like you are truly connecting with people. Let me tell you a story to show you what I mean. I have a friend named Marco, a very dedicated English learner. He had studied hard for years. He could write emails at work without a problem. He could read newspapers and books. His grammar was nearly perfect, but there was still a problem. People sometimes struggled to understand him, even when he used the right words. One evening, I invited Marco over for dinner. When he arrived, he smiled politely and said, "I am happy to be here." The words were correct, but his voice was very flat. He stressed every word equally, almost like a robot. He wanted to express warmth and friendliness, but what I heard sounded stiff, like he was simply stating a fact. Later, he told me about a new cafe he had discovered. He said, "I like the coffee." Again, his tone was flat. So I teased him and said, "You sound like you don't really like it." He looked shocked and said, "No, Jara, I love it." But he said even that with the same flat intonation. That's when it became clear. The problem wasn't his grammar or his vocabulary. The problem was his rhythm and intonation. You see, English is a stress-timed language. That means we don't stress every word equally. Instead, we create a natural beat by stressing the most important words, the nouns, the main verbs, the adjectives, the adverbs. The small function words, like a, the, is, on, of, are spoken much more quickly and quietly. This creates a kind of drumbeat in your sentence, a rhythm that native speakers rely on to understand you. Without that rhythm, speech can feel heavy, confusing, or even tiring to listen to. It's the difference between hearing random sounds and hearing music. The beat gives the message a pattern and makes it meaningful. And then there's intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. This is what communicates your emotion and your intent. For example, listen to the difference. "Are you coming?" Your voice rises at the end. That rising tone signals a question. "I am coming." Your voice falls at the end. That falling tone signals a statement. When Marco said, "I like the coffee," with a flat voice, I couldn't hear his excitement. But if he had used natural intonation, it would have sounded like this. "I like the coffee." His voice would rise slightly on like and fall naturally on coffee. A clear, positive statement, full of meaning. This isn't just about sounding like a native speaker. It's about being understood, about making your words match your emotions, about letting your message carry real life and warmth. The melody of your voice is just as important as the words you choose. When you start to pay attention to the rhythm and intonation of English, something amazing happens. You begin to hear a whole new layer of meaning in the conversations around you. You don't just hear the words, you hear the feelings inside the words. You'll notice excitement in someone's voice when they tell a funny story. You'll hear seriousness when someone gives you a warning. You'll hear kindness and politeness when someone makes a request. This rhythm and melody of English is like an emotional key. Once you learn to hear it, you unlock a deeper level of understanding that goes far beyond vocabulary and grammar. So the question is, how do you start to add this music to your own English? Let's begin with something simple and fun. The next time you're listening to a podcast, watching a TV show, or even a YouTube video, don't focus only on the words. Pay close attention to the beat of a language. English has a rhythm, just like music. Here's a little trick you can try. Tap your finger along while you listen. Pretend you're a drummer keeping time. For example, if someone says, "She went to the store to buy some milk," you'll notice that the words she, went, store, buy, and milk are stressed. They sound louder and longer. The other words to this some are said quickly and softly in between. Tap your finger when you hear the strong beats. Very quickly, You'll notice this pattern is everywhere in English. Now, let's make it even more active. For your practice this week, I want you to use your hands when you speak. Yes, your hands. When you say a stressed word, move your hand slightly upward, like you're marking the beat. When you ask a question, let your hand rise toward the end. When you make a statement, let your hand fall. This simple physical action connects your body to your voice. It helps you feel the rhythm of English instead of only thinking about it. And when you feel it in your own speech, you'll start to hear it more easily in other people's voices too. Remember, this exercise is not about being perfect. It's about sounding more natural, more clear, and easier to understand. The music of English is what makes your words come alive. But let's be honest. On this journey, there will be days when you feel frustrated. There will be moments when you think, why am I not improving? Or, why does this still feel so hard? This is completely normal. And this is where we need to talk about something even more important, the psychology of listening. Because listening problems are not only about language, they are also about how your brain works under stress. Think about what your brain is trying to do in a real conversation. It has to process a new accent. It has to separate words that are all connected together. It has to figure out the meaning of an idiom you've never heard before. And at the same time, it has to prepare a response quickly so you don't leave an awkward silence. That's a lot of work in just a few seconds. This is what we call high cognitive load. Your brain is overloaded, like a computer with too many tabs open. And when the load is too heavy, your brain does what every brain does. It shuts down. It freezes. It stops processing information and tries to protect you by going silent. This doesn't mean you're a bad learner. It doesn't mean you'll never understand. It simply means your brain is overwhelmed and needs new strategies. Let me give you an example. I know a brilliant scientist named Dr. Chen. He's a genius in his field. He can read and understand the most complicated academic research papers in English without a problem. His passive vocabulary is huge, probably bigger than most native speakers. But he told me something surprising. He said he always felt completely exhausted after something as simple as a casual work lunch with his colleagues. At lunch, the conversation was fast. People interrupted each other. They used jokes, slang, and idioms. And even though Dr. Chen knew thousands of words, his brain was overwhelmed by the speed and the social pressure. By the end of lunch, he wasn't just tired, he was drained. That's the power of cognitive load. It's not about how smart you are or how big your vocabulary is. It's about how much your brain can handle in the moment. Dr. Chen's story shows us something very important. He could handle technical meetings with no problem.
Why?
Because the language was predictable. He knew the vocabulary, he understood the structure, and the topics were familiar. But the moment the conversation shifted to casual small talk about a new movie or someone's weekend plans, he felt completely lost. It wasn't because he didn't know the words.
He did.
The problem was that his brain couldn't keep up with the fast pace, the quick changes in topic, and the casual idioms that people threw into the conversation. His cognitive load was simply too high. All of his mental energy went into just trying to keep up, and by the end of the lunch, he wasn't just tired, he was completely drained. And Dr. Chen is not alone. This is something almost every learner experiences at some point. But there's another psychological barrier that makes things even harder: social anxiety. This is the fear of making a mistake, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the fear of being judged for your grammar, your accent, or even the way you sound. And this fear is completely normal, but it's also incredibly heavy. It weighs down your listening skills more than any grammar mistake ever could. You see, when you're anxious, your brain is doing two jobs at once. It's trying to listen for words, but it's also scanning for approval. It's whispering questions like, "What if I get this wrong? What will they think of me?" And that internal monologue takes up so much mental energy that you have very little left to actually focus on the conversation. I remember talking with a young learner named Lily. She was in a language class with very advanced students. She told me she always felt nervous to speak up, even when she knew the right answer. When I asked why, she said, "I just can't stand the thought of someone looking at me and thinking her English isn't very good." And here's the truth. Lily's English was good. Her fear of being judged was much heavier than any grammar challenge. Her brain was so focused on trying to be perfect that it couldn't relax enough to let her speak naturally. So how do we deal with this? The answer is not more vocabulary lists or harder grammar drills. The answer is self-compassion. You have to learn to be kind to yourself, to remind yourself that you are a learner, not a machine. To remember that mistakes are not just acceptable, they are necessary. Your brain needs to know it's safe to stumble. It needs to hear, it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to miss a word. It's okay to feel overwhelmed sometimes. So, here's your mental practice for this week. The next time you feel your brain freezing in a conversation, or the next time that wave of anxiety rises up inside you, I want you to whisper something to yourself. Whisper, "It's okay. My brain is working hard. I am a language learner. I don't need to be perfect." This small act of kindness to yourself is not just comforting. It's powerful. It lowers your cognitive load. It calms your anxiety. And it gives your brain the freedom to return to the real task, listening, engaging, and connecting. This, my friends, is the practice of self-compassion. And in my opinion, it's the single most important part of the entire journey. Because now we've covered everything from connected speech to accents, from context clues to the music of English, from conversational tools to the psychology of listening. And in this final part, we're going to tie it all together with the one ingredient that makes all of this work. The ingredient that separates people who improve from those who stay stuck. That ingredient is consistency. You see, all the tools we've talked about today, from chunking and shadowing to listening for context clues to tuning your ear to rhythm and intonation, they're not magic tricks. They're simply tools. They are the same tools that every single fluent English speaker has used, whether they realized it or not. But here's the truth. A tool only works if you pick it up and use it. And the real secret to using it well is not about how much you use it in one sitting, but about how often you use it over time. This is the difference between intensity and consistency. You don't need to spend hours every day practicing. You don't need to lock yourself away for an entire weekend with nothing but podcasts and YouTube videos. In fact, that kind of intense, infrequent practice often leads to burnout and frustration. What really matters is consistency. Think of it like this. You are making small deposits into your listening confidence account every single day. A few minutes here, a few minutes there. It may feel small in the moment, but over time, those small deposits grow into something powerful. Just like building a house, you don't do it all in one day. You place one brick, then another, day after day. Until one day you look up and realize you've built something strong, something solid, something beautiful. Your listening skills grow the same way, brick by brick, word by word, moment by moment. And I want to leave you with one last story about my friend Amelia, because this is where her journey came full circle. After months of steady practice, even on days when she was tired, even on days when she wasn't in the mood, She kept going. And slowly her brain changed. The fast, connected sounds of English no longer felt like noise. Different accents no longer sounded like a different language. Idioms, which once made her freeze, became easier to guess. Piece by piece, she built something far more valuable than just listening skill. She built confidence. One evening, Amelia was at a work social event. She found herself talking with a new colleague from Scotland. Now, if you've ever heard a strong Scottish accent, you know it can be tough, even for native speakers. He spoke quickly, used slang, and threw in idioms Amelia had never heard before. In the past, she would have shut down, smiled politely, nodded along while feeling completely lost inside. But this time, something was different. She had become a language detective. She was a confident listener. She used the tools. She listened for rhythm and stress. She looked for context clues. And when she got stuck, she didn't panic. Instead, she smiled and said, "I'm sorry, that phrase is new to me. Could you explain what taking a kit means?" Her colleague laughed kindly and said, "It just means taking a nap." The conversation didn't end, it deepened. They laughed together, they kept talking, and for the first time in a long time, Amelia felt like she was truly part of the conversation, not just watching from the outside. That's the shift we're aiming for. To move from fear to confidence. From passively listening to actively participating. From feeling lost to feeling connected. And that, my friends, is the true goal of this journey. You now have all the tools you need, the knowledge, the strategies, and the power of consistency. The path forward is clear. Trust the process. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate every small step. And above all, enjoy the journey. Because every time you listen, every time you practice, you are building something strong and lasting. One day, you'll look back and realize how far you've come, and that moment will be worth every bit of effort you put in today. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Super English Talks. I'm Jara, and it's been such a joy to guide you on this journey. Until we meet again, keep listening, keep practicing, and never forget, you've got this.